Hello everyone, I'm Jack and I'm back. And this is the moment of truth. Unfortunately, it's cold out here. I'm near Denton, Texas, and the weather just made a big change the last couple of days. But got to do this work, so I'm out here in the cold working. All right, to catch everyone up, I made a splash mold off of a C8 hood. Didn't do the greatest job. Next time I'll show you how to do it better. Live and learn. But it's good enough for what I'm doing in this case. I just never thought I was going to make another hood out of it. And then after I made the splash mold, I went, hey, you know what? I could make a carbon fiber hood for my Corvette. And then it's like, oh, well, I didn't make the mold good enough to do that. So next time I'll show you how to do that. Anyway, so I made the splash mold. Then I put mold release on it, which consisted of wax and semi-permanent mold release. Should be overkill. Put the gel coat on there. I used black gel coat. That way it would look like a finished product when I pull it off, assuming everything works. Then I put a layer of fiberglass mat on there. Was hoping to put 2 layers immediately, but was not able to due to time, weather, mosquitoes, darkness, all that. So then the next day, yesterday, I put in the second layer of fiberglass mat. So each layer of fiberglass mat is about 45 thousandths thick. The gel coat is about 25 thousandths thick. So it's a little over, almost 1/8 of an inch thick total. It's still not sturdy enough that it would be on its own, but it actually mounts onto a structure underneath it. They're bonded together, so it doesn't have to be, but now it is a whole lot stronger than it was and a whole lot heavier. I'm shocked how much heavier it is. But I was generous with the fiberglass resin when I did this, so that's part of it. All right, so let's see what I got here. Scissors. By the way, when you're working with the fiberglass, these scissors have fiberglass on them. If you catch it early enough, just plain old rubbing alcohol will take off this. And then I use a razor blade also to scrape it. I didn't clean these. If you don't clean them, make sure you leave them open, because if you leave them closed, they'll get glued closed. And all I'm doing is cutting off. This was an extra piece. At the end, I saw an area that was, I couldn't tell if it had fiberglass for the second layer or not. The first layer, it's easy to tell if there's fiberglass or not because you'll see the texture. But after that, when you're putting the second layer on, it's hard to tell what spots you've hit the second time. So unless you have a whole sheet, I was piecing it together. This is probably 20 pieces, maybe 25 pieces, maybe even 30. But anyway, it was scrap that I had that's been sitting around for close to a year. And I said, you know what? I might as well get rid of all this extra scrap. It did make it tedious and took a lot longer. But again, at least now it's used instead of thrown away. All right, and let me cut off that. This doesn't have to be done. When I pull this off, I'm going to trim the whole edge. But I figured, hey, as long as I have the scissors. All right, so leaving excess like this is key to being able to separate this. If you make it to where your fiberglass and your gel coat and your part are all even, it's very difficult to find a starting spot to separate the pieces. So I purposely overlapped everything so that I have a place to get a hold of. Because I made this wrong, I put silver tape all around the edge so that it wouldn't stick right there. And so that's what you see. All right. So this thing is actually oversized from the hood itself, and I'll come in and sand and trim it to the appropriate size. If the overkill on the release worked, this thing should pop right off. If it didn't, well, we'll see. All right, so in my previous video, I showed you the contractor grade air shims. This is if it doesn't just pop off. I'll use these to separate it. And of course, train comes when I'm doing this. It also came with these plastic pieces, which are going to be very handy, even if it does come off easy. All right, got my knee pad here. So the first step, you just got to find a spot where you can start separating these things. So I go here, and like I said, I know that that silver tape is the edge. So what happens is I should be able to grab and flex this just enough. Get it let loose on the corner. And again, the more you have hanging out, the more leverage you can get. You can separate. A lot of times I'll separate it with just one layer because it's easier to flex it, and then I'll put it back on. But because this is so flat, I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do both layers and not do that. All right, so all you got to do is just get enough of a gap. You can get one of these pieces in here. I also use wooden pieces, but I prefer plastic. Now, once you get it started, you can go around the perimeter. That's going to be the best option for separating, because the perimeter is what's going to be holding, because there'll be something that overhung. And you can see that. My release mechanism obviously works. And then you run into a spot every once in a while where there's something in the way. But once it starts letting loose, and just let you know, this thing's going to come off unbelievably easy. Once I get this perimeter let loose, this thing will probably just, as I'm doing this, at some point it's just going to pop. And again, it's almost always the perimeter that's holding on. What did I do with my other? And I'm being ultra careful here. I don't need to. There we go. And at this point, I could slide in one of the air pieces. In fact, I'll do that just to show you. Let's grab this one. All right. So I just come anywhere where it's already let loose. Slide this in that gap when it's deflated. And you can see it already slides that far. And then I just pump. And you can hear it pop as it lets loose. And there will always be some edge that's holding on. That's what keeps it from popping off. Otherwise, the whole thing at this point would pop off. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I would do if This one wasn't so easy. All right, there's two of them. Let me go ahead and put these bulbs up. Right there is where the gap stops. So here, slide it in and over. All right, so now I can push this, let the air out of this one, deflate it, and move to the next spot. So something right here, it looks like is kind of holding it. And again, it's because I don't have a real well-defined edge. And I can tell you right now, I could lift up, pry that off with no problem. The other thing is when you get it like this, you get a lot of leverage. If I were to grab that corner, and it would pop off because of the leverage. All right. And again, at any point I could just grab it. Just like this. There it goes. All right, now the big question. Do I have any alligatoring? What's the surface look like? We'll find out in just a second. Notice I have gloves on to protect my hands. It's because it's freaking cold out here. All right. Oh, and I am going to hit the back of this with the sander grinder because of all these areas that stick up. Don't need it cosmetically, but I'm going to be handling this sometimes without gloves, and I don't want to hurt my hands. I already have enough cuts on there. All right, let's see what we got. Down. I guess the white is the dust from all the sanding I did. Get my brush here. Now there's going to be the mold release and wax on here. So washing it with something will make it look better. So it's not show quality, which would have been ideal, but it's such that a light sanding, primer and paint, that thing would look great. I was hoping for it doesn't need anything and I could use it just like it is. That's not the case. Don't know if you can see, but it does have a few defects here and there. There's also a couple spots that are in the mold that came across, which of course I expected. All right, so I am going to grab some rubbing alcohol. And I could just use soap and water, but it's cold. I don't want to get the hose out and get wet and all that. Might as well pour this on there. All right. And of course, the alcohol leaves a nice shine on it, so you can see what it'll look like once it is polished up. Now, when I put on the semi-permanent mold release, I sprayed it with a squirt bottle and then I rubbed it with a rag. All right, it says you can spray it, you can put it on with a sponge, you can do a lot of different things to apply it, but that's what I decided to do. All right, so we got kind of a false sheen because of the alcohol, but this gives you an idea of what this looks like. Now, I've never tried polishing the gel coat, so I may try that just to see what happens, or I may leave it like this. It doesn't need a polished surface, and in fact, I bought flat black because I want to match everything together, and I don't want to do a lot of body work, so spraying it with flat black makes it easier. I'm after the shape right now, not the surface. All right, so there we go. I'd have to say this was definitely a success. I'm happy with the results. And now what I do is I will come in with my vibrating cutter and cut right along the edge of where the black is. And again, it will be slightly oversized, but that's fine, that's what I'd prefer. And then I will mock it up. So in the next day or so, I'll do another video and I'll show you what the front end of the Pagani-ish, GT40-ish C8 looks like. All right, like, subscribe, hit the alert, hit the thanks if you want to donate, and if you don't like what I'm doing, you don't know jack. Bye.